My name's Tim Onoff, and I'm one of the founders of NSI. We're a 20-year-old business to government consultancy. Work a lot over the past 20 years with PE and VC funded companies, but also Fortune 500 companies. I'm going to give you a case study of regulatory hacking for a product company, a home safety company, and I'm going to walk you through the segments of their strategy in about 5 minutes in terms of what they did, their strategy, and how they were able to take what was a disruptive strategy to what was a no to their market entry strategy, and to create and beat the regulatory system and to create a market that you all, if you have a home, probably know now. Before we do that, I'll give you a Chinese proverb, which is, it's not the cry of the wild duck that leads to flight, but it's the flight that causes the flock to fly and follow. That's a lot what entrepreneurs and startups do when it comes to regulatory issues. They enter markets, they create trends, they push the level of innovation of what would be standard regulatory practice. So I can't give you the name of this company. I think you'll figure it out. How many of you know or have a smoke detector and carbon monoxide alarm in your home or your apartment? You do, because laws in these areas require these to be placed. You had a company and saw the smoke detector industry. They saw the fact that you have a carbon monoxide detector too. First company to come up with the idea combining the two. What if we combined the two and we created a mandate? Let's go to the building and codes associations and tell them, for a nominal amount of money, this will save lives. This will create a market in a small amount of money, and it's going to save a lot of lives. What do you think that building association said? Sounds great, we'd love to save lives, but our job is to protect all our building owners, our developers and apartment owners from any extraneous mandates. Lives are great, but we don't want any mandates. So get out of here. We're going to fight you at every step of the way. Your product's dead. So they showed up on our doorstep. And we looked at this and we said, first lesson in terms of unwinding an issue, if you're looking at this regulatory hacking, which is, number one, look at your regulatory ecosystem. They looked at the ecosystem and they said, building codes, building codes, building codes. And we looked at it and said, wow, tell us a little bit about this. And, well, okay. Well, the first thing is there's a study being conducted right now by the National Association of Pediatric Nurses. And it's going to show that the leading death, or one of the leading deaths of children in American households, is carbon monoxide. Ding, 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 ding. We all looked at that and said, this has nothing to do with building codes. This is a public health issue. This is using cutting-edge technology to solve a public health issue. So know your ecosystem. Reframe it. We didn't do anything around that regulatory strategy, and we began to build that in terms of saying, we're going to sit there and we're going to go talk to these people in the building codes. No, we're going to sit here and create an ecosystem around this to say, technology, public health, create a coalition. Who's in that coalition? That coalition is going to be doctors, nurses associations, home safety. It's going to have people from all levels of economic strata that want their children to be safe. And you begin to create a coalition around who cares about this and how you begin to pass and promulgate legislation, first at a state level, then in the local municipalities where you want to sell this. So your ecosystem, you figure out who your partners are. In any ecosystem, you have partners, you have competitors, you have neutrals. It's a food chain. You have to look at that ecosystem in a regulatory environment, figure out how you're going to use certain parts of it, who's going to be coming after you, and you have to work around that and be proactive and figure out and understand when someone's coming after you before they come after you, and that revolves around creating messaging, looking at legal issues, looking at your legislative and regulatory strategy. Now, this company was scaling, so we couldn't put together a strategy that said, let's go and do 50 states right away. We had to wind this over successive years. So then you look at the problem and you say, when do people die of carbon monoxide poisoning? Usually in the wintertime, right? You're heating your houses. You have bad heaters. So we drew a circle around the states with the highest home heating costs and then the deaths around that, attributed to to carbon monoxide over a series of years. And then you had the architecture of a regulatory campaign to promulgate legislation, a public affairs campaign around a coalition with doctors and nurses and people that cared about fair housing issues. And then you pushed legislation in these targeted states, Massachusetts, New York, New Jersey. When you closed New York, that company, which was now suddenly the market leader, their market share went up 498%. So from an entrepreneurial side, an amazing success. But then they would partner. So after we passed this legislation on the state level, we would work with these groups on a local level to promulgate legislation enabling them to do this. And we took it one step further from a marketing side, which was a public affairs campaign that went around and went with the local fire departments and found the largest retail supplier of these types of devices. You probably know who that is, if you think about it. Their white and orange logo, and they're all around the country. The CEO of that large retail organization saw this campaign, and he took the level for the company to the next level, which was product placement. So when you go into one of those stores and you want your product, when you have your corporation, you launch this on a retail product side, you actually have people that will want your product at eye level. If you don't get product placement, it goes in the bottom shelf, and people like me just don't bend over to pick it up. So he saw the fact that they were, A, passing legislation, opening up the market, educating consumers, B, creating a coalition with elected officials, fire departments, doctors, etc., C, passing this thing on the local level, and then doing kickoffs down to a level of granularity with local and city fire departments, and they were putting banisters at the end, here's your discount, get this carbon monoxide smoke detector, go for it. This was a company that was told 18 months prior, we're not going to do that. No way. And now, since that campaign has started, you probably have close to 30 states that have now passed legislation requiring some level or across the board carbon monoxide detectors in all residential dwellings. So if you think about that from an entrepreneurial side, the company, they looked at this and they truly felt like, we're doing the right thing, this is great, but this is also would be great for our company. But it took a strategy to kind of rewire and hack this and reshape it from a codification issue on building codes, make it public health, and drive it with lobbying, drive it with public affairs and communication, drive it with earned media events, coalition building. It all ties into this. So that's my 5 minutes, I think. I'm going to have my other colleagues will talk about this. And then there's one last quote that people in the government affairs lobbying practitioners will tie, and it ties into the wild goose story. Lobbyists sometimes will say something to their clients, and it goes like this. If you're not working on the menu, you're going to find yourself on the menu one day. So as an entrepreneur, when you look at your issue with codes and things around regulations, you have to constantly do that and realize that you're going to open up markets. And some of you may do that, and you may create something and do something great. This company, I would think, probably has saved hundreds of thousands of lives. They've profited from it for sure, but they've done a great thing.